I don't know what Danny's got us into today, guys, but I'm so excited to see you.
Right.
Same with us. Very excited.
Thank you.
We've never done this before, so that's exciting too.
Yeah. Yeah, this is only our second time really doing it live in Zoom, and it's just, wow, what a year. I feel like what a trip that we're together. What time is it there in Sweden? You're in Stockholm?
It's 5 p.m.
5 p.m. So getting
Yeah,
ready.
it's late afternoon and it's pretty dark.
Very dark.
But we do have some clear skies today, so we might see the full moon when it's already risen. Yes. But we've been in a overcast for like 30 days, like that. It's been
So
very
intense. That's so intense. We've been in like
come to us.
Where in Mexico are you? Where in Mexico are you? Are you on the east or the west or in the center, or where are you?
We're on the West Coast. We're on the Pacific side. We're in the state of Oaxaca in a little beach town called Puerto Escondido. And it's, yeah, super beachy, super jungly. Actually, today's a little cold. I don't know, it's
25 Celsius, 23 Celsius.
It's all relative.
But
stop bragging.
But what timeline are you on? Is it central? Huh?
Yes, I mean, it's U.S. Central. Mexico City has the same time as we do.
Yeah, so it's 7 hours behind us then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Well.
And where are the kids?
We're kids are with the nanny and with a friend right now, so they're doing great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're free. Okay, so let's get the show started.
Exactly.
So you want to get started?
Yeah.
I just want to know what's going on with them, and I just hear about your year. That's really what I want to know. How's it going, and everything that you're learning and sharing, and wow, it's been just such a journey. It's such a, I took the word ascension off one of the web pages recently, and I regret that because it is absolutely feeling like we're moving through some kind of ascension process, and it's been so beautiful in so many ways, but also really destructive, like a lot of Shiva energy, a lot of letting go, a lot of relationships kind of falling apart. But at the same time, the relationships that were true and meaningful and real seem to be coming full circle. So it's really a treat to be with the two of you, given we really haven't spent a lot of time this year and seems to have gone in different directions, but now we're back together. And I think that that's one of the benefits and one of the gifts of this incredible time that we're all living through. So
I just want to introduce Anders and Magdi to everybody around, particularly Anders. I would say that he's the best man in our wedding, nearly 8 years ago. And looking around, Anders was a graduate of Larry Schultz's back in the day. You might elaborate on the year yourself, but we just met in a very serendipitous way in Stockholm, Sweden. And Anders also has the gifted, developed talent of being an astrologer. And he had a deep urge to get Marie over to teach a workshop that was meant to be taught with her former husband, Larry Schultz. So Marie had recently widowed, and Anders said, "You're going to meet someone." And I had no idea what was going on or nothing. I just came out of completely from a different planetary orbit and just barged in, and this energy drew me in. And Marie and I, we met in a hotel in Stockholm, Sweden. I had a different mission. Marie was on another mission, and we've been kind of together ever since. So the encounter has been very interesting, and Anders continues to teach yoga. It was did some stuff together under the It's Yoga International moniker, and then decided to part our own ways to do different things, but continue with yoga. And we've been contacting again, I think mainly given that Anders
he's so amazing,
has a tendency to really kind of question everything and be alive. And in the same place that he's been questioning, we've been questioning too. This year has been a lot about sitting still and going, what is really happening here? And I'd say that I felt that we used the common tools of yoga, because yoga is a journey, and the journey is not necessarily always a journey of comfort, but it's a journey of going lighter and really working within. And that inward job has really kind of, like Marie said, come full circle in many ways again. And Anders has been talking openly about, there is something else going on here. This is not completely right. When the narrative that's official is not the truth. And that's an intuitive, I feel that that's an intuitive sense feeling. And this is one of those things that I like to expand on during these times, our intuitive intelligence coming up. And so that's why Anders and Magdi are here. And Magdi and Anders have, I believe you met in also in astrological circles, that you can elaborate on that. And, you guys have been planning your journey together.
We met at It's Yoga. That's where we met, but at It's Yoga Stockholm.
Yeah.
Because Magdi is the mother of one of my students. And she had graduated in 2011, and she came back and helped me and my ex-wife to teach a teacher training. And then she brought Magdalena there to some kind of meditation that you were actually helping her with a meditation. So I stumbled on Magdi in late 2012.
Wow.
2012. And then, to make a long story short, I threw a big 50-year birthday party with my identical twin brother, Tom, in July of 2013. And that party, when we were setting when we were placing our guests, and it became clear to me that my brother Tom, he wanted to sit beside my aunt and a cousin. He wouldn't sit beside his wife. Then I thought to myself, well, then I should place Magdi by my side, because I was so inspired by her. And I know that I had mentioned her to you because you had just been there in June, and also earlier, I forget. But anyways, so I wanted to have Magdi by my side and another friend of Madeline's on the other side. And that thing set my marriage on fire, or it just came tumbling down. After 20-year marriage, I understood at the age of 50 that I don't want to keep living this way where we're not harmonizing. So I said to my ex that I wanted to divorce, and then 2 weeks later I understood that I was in love with Magdi, but that wasn't like clear to me until it happened. So it's a really crazy, wild story, that journey. But that made me take other steps in my life, and I had to divorce, and I let go of It's Yoga, the studio, and let Madeleine have that, and then one thing led to another. But that's how we got together. That's how it started. Actually, Magdi was from the beginning a tutor, a teacher, a therapist, and I mean, she was coaching me through a very hard time when It's Yoga Stockholm was not going well. I mean, our economy was so bad, and I had to get real about that situation, and so that was then. Now we're way down the road, and I don't know. Do you want to say anything, Magdi, about how we this 2020, how we understood that something was awry, or something was definitely not right with rules and regulation. We were in Australia at the time, in March. We were in February, March, we were in Sydney.
Nice.
Well, I've always I've been seeing things or being in tune with things that I thought everybody saw, but I didn't understand that it took me, like I was middle-aged before I realized that that's not what everybody sees or hears. And and for me, it's been just obvious that you go to the right if I'm guided, or I go to the left. And when we were in Australia, it was crazy. Like suddenly from one day to another, you couldn't get toilet paper and you couldn't get rice or pasta or food. It was like a war zone, and nobody was sick and nothing had happened, and nobody could figure it out what's going on. And in the newspapers they wrote, you don't have to hoard toilet paper because look at our stock. But it was like completely crazy, and people were going bananas it was like fighting over toilet paper, stuff like that. And it was just weird. And then we came home, and it went from bad to worse. Also in Sweden.
Yeah, it took about 10 days. And then suddenly all the classes were taken off the schedule, and gyms were closing, and yoga studios were closing.
And nothing made sense because from our perspective, I've been working with health on all levels, not as a psychotherapist to start with, but then on all levels, holistic. And we need to get sick in order to build up our immune system. And the whole world has a panic, has a huge anxiety of getting sick. Like that is the end of the world. And nobody questions it. And if a child gets fever, immediately rush off and gives them some.
What do you call statin drugs, or what do you call that down?
Tylenol.
Yeah, Tylenol, whatever. It's a common name for reducing fever, and not understanding that the fever is needed to clean out and burn out the toxic, and then you get healthy. It's like that's obvious to me, and it's not obviously to everybody, and it's fine. But this got completely out of hand. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever, and we was just watching everything and seeing why are people not thinking logically? What's happening? And the newspaper started feeding fear. And since I'm working with groups, have been doing a lot, I know that fear is never logical, but people who are fearful, they use logic as a reason to justify the fear.
Wow. Can we just sit with that for a second?
Yeah.
That was a master teaching.
Can you repeat
that
again? Because that's the real gem for all of us.
Say it again.
Okay. Well, I'm so used to talking about this stuff, so I'm laughing at you. No, fear is never logical.
Right.
But people who are afraid use all sorts of explanations why to remain fearful.
Yes.
So they use the so-called logic why they should be afraid. And already that doesn't make sense. So when I talk to people, I say, do you like to be afraid? We know that fear debilitates the body and makes you sick.
Immune system
and the immune system and everything. So, but when fear gets out of hand, like now, that you can't reason. People just want to survive, and they do anything like taking this vaccine, which is going to kill an awful lot of people and have a lot of sides. It does not make sense. Nothing makes, if you start logically thinking. And I don't know how it's in the States. I would read a little bit, but in Sweden, everything is about death and just feeding the fear. Luckily, we're in a country where we are not forced to wear masks yet. We don't know. They want to change the law now, and they couldn't. The government couldn't, because we have a safety law saying that it has to be an election between changing.
Yeah, it has to be time, like 9 months and an election stuff to change the constitution. But they're really trying to do it anyway, and to close their eyes for it. But they're
So if you just wind the clock back very early in March already, we have been receiving all kinds of channelings saying that everybody has the coronavirus in us, and it's a healthy virus, so it's not deadly sickness. And the introduction with the 5G,
the rollout of the 5G,
that is what triggers in some people. People with strong immune system will not react, but everybody is affected. So in a natural way, we spent a lot of time in the woods. I couldn't be in the city. I'm very, very sensitive to that.
Yeah, but just to stay there in March, what happened was that when it happened, there were news coming, other news coming through Facebook, where experts were saying that this is not true. What they're saying, it's actually toxicity. It is the 5G rollout that produces this toxic environment. And that there is a wonderful book in the subject called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, which is, it's such a research on electricity and how it affects us. But the mainstream media would not accept this view, and these news were censored. Suddenly it was not there anymore. And we hadn't experienced that before, that knowledgeable, wise people talking on the internet were censored or taken away, because what do they write? That this content does not apply or go with our official.
And a lot. I started receiving, like Judy Mikovic came out very early with.
Yeah, you know her, don't you?
Sorry. Can you speak a bit louder, Magdi?
It's your
Is it?
speakers or not?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Have you heard of Judy Mikovic?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And suddenly falling out of grace, or whatever you call it in English, where they are saying a lot of lies about people and discredit them. And Tom Cohen and a lot of other people, and there were doctors, the specialists talking in Chicago, in Milwaukee, in all sorts of places in the States, speaking in the streets, trying to share information. This is a big lie. This is not whatever. And suddenly all this information disappears. So that's when we started really said, what's going on? Why are we in like, I'm born behind the Iron Curtain, so I know what it means when you have no rights.
Magdi is born in Hungary.
Yeah.
And I know I've been brought up with the fear that you don't have rights. The police, everything is corrupt, basically. So for no reason whatsoever, you can just suddenly end up in jail for no reason or disappear. And suddenly this becomes, it's not a reality in Sweden yet, but we're getting there. And I'm not afraid. I know I'm in my light. I know what's going to happen eventually. So I'm good with that. But as you started that, Marie, about how everything is falling apart and breaking apart and all that, well, it needs to. We have to break down the old in order to build up something new. And but basically, it's fascinating. And another thing that is fascinating, how smart people buy it. They buy it and they call us idiots, of course, and all that. And
I don't know if maybe from like a therapist perspective, you can speak on this too, but that's been the hardest part for me about this journey is just really coming similar to you guys, just honestly and openly and looking at what was happening and saying, this just doesn't feel right. This doesn't smell right. This is fear incarnating in massive levels. And so, like yourselves, I think we just kind of organically started saying, hey, like, wait a second, let's keep the conversation going. And then seeing the censorship and all of that was really disheartening in a way, because it was like, well, who has the power to take that down? And like, wait a second here, why don't you spend your time proving those people wrong? Like we live in a society in which I think a lot of us believed that we were free to speak our truth and free to share information. And when that stopped, I think what happened is it gave a lot of people permission, these logical, fear-based minds, permission to really show their fangs. Like people got nasty and they didn't even realize they were doing that. They felt very logical and all of that. Oh, no, Judy, she's crazy. And oh, no, she's crazy. And it was just this canceling that happened. And so I guess it would be interesting to hear how you guys, if you felt any of that residue, I certainly have, hands clean, and how we continue to walk forward through this as there is a lot of energy.
First of all, if you have the ability to separate the question, what are we talking about, to become personal. So once you can do that in the moment, then you will also know how to approach. But usually what happens is that fear is dominant, obviously, and it triggers. So people attack. Yeah. They attack out of fear. But if you take it personally, then you enter a power struggle. And in a power struggle, it's never a win-win situation. So the trick is how to maneuver through this minefield of emotions in a constructive way. And you can only do that by being, by keeping to the matter that has been discussed and not entering the personal attack. Does it make sense to you?
Perfect. Yeah.
And I do that all the time because and I keep saying, if we want to have a dialogue, people who are working in communications and who are, it's their profession, they use the word that we can't have a dialogue because first they say we are having a dialogue, and then we can't have a dialogue because you can't convince me that I'm right, and I can't convince you that you're right. And then I have to explain that a dialogue is about sharing information. It's not about convincing about right or wrong. It's sharing information, sharing and learning something in the process. So if you can detach from the emotional side of it, then it's so much more, it's easier to keep focus on what do I want to create. And then you need to realize that I really don't want to change people. If you get to that point that your only agenda is to share information, not to make people realize that you're right and they're wrong, then you will never create a power struggle. Because again, in a power struggle, there are no winners. So we need to leave this world of duality, right and wrong, good or bad or whatever. And you can trust us. We have heard all sorts of stuff. But my most favorite sentence when I teach, and I'm sharing it with you, and if you can remember this, I say to my students, if you want to learn something about yourself, don't focus on what other people say or do. Focus on your reaction to what other people say and do. And deal with your own fears. How does it feel when somebody is angry with you or nasty or saying these things? Until you have healed that wound, and then you can stand your ground.
Totally.
So that's basically what it's about. And when you are so fearful as people are now, and again, they are afraid of dying, because that's always the reason. And we all know that we're going to die. It's not that I'm telling, I mean, that's the only thing we know for sure, right? So it's not that I'm saying, okay, go ahead, shoot me, I want to die. But to spend all this energy to avoid the fear, and yes, but it's just not logical. So you don't live anymore. It's just surviving. So what kind of life is that?
Beautiful.
But
you could spend your life living. Yeah, you could spend your life living, or you could spend your life dying. You know.
Yeah, slowly.
But it also, if you want to see a greater picture of how people react, we must put into the picture that people have been programmed through our educational systems and media in a very, I mean, that they've actually kind of proclaimed that God doesn't exist, it's all science. So the generations that came out of the 30s that lived in secularized societies, they lost the belief in their own spirituality. It was
in their own logic, intuition,
and they just, it was just work and work and then party or I mean as long as you live and then it stops. There's nothing else. But if we had a functioning spiritual society, we would know that you choose when to be born and when to die. That's the contract that you make beforehand. And that's why every true astrologer, I mean, who goes deep into astrology, knows this truth, that you decide yourself what your horoscope is to be, and then you try to manifest those energies in your chosen lifespan. And if it's meant to be, you will come back, and you can also follow cycles and solar eclipse series and stuff to see when you're coming back or when you've been here before, if that's of any interest. But today, this knowledge is not accepted or spread. No, people are very much in this illusion that like I when I teach yoga, I often refer to Larry's when you do the headstand sequence, water the seed of knowledge, break the veil of illusion. And that's we have to turn people upside down so that they can see through their hearts and not their brains.
And you know, the funny thing is that people refer to science, that science is the only thing to rely on. And history has proven that science is changing all the time. What has been the truth yesterday is not true today anymore. But that they omit and still hold on to, that science is the only God and the only thing we can rely on. So nothing is, everything changes. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all about flexibility and how open-minded you are trying to be. But we are in this situation of a virus that they claim is deadly. And considering how few people have actually died, because since they haven't isolated it, so you don't know whether it's this or that, or even of something else. And usually, since this is the case now, so how do we share information for people to start trusting their logic, their own intuition, instead of being brainwashed with something that doesn't make sense? And I say to a lot of people, but look at statistics. That is numbers. It's not a belief system. How many people have totally died this year in Sweden? How many have totally died last year, the past 10 years? And there are fewer people this year. So where is the pandemic?
I don't know what the numbers are in the States, but they're probably about the same. And still they're like hyping up the numbers and saying, oh, so many people have died and they're dying.
It's now it's like
every year they're dying.
Yeah, I mean, you have people getting it, and then you say, okay, what happens? And well, you had to sleep for 3 days, and you go, well, you probably needed the rest. You know, you've been working your butt off. You have a very unhealthy diet and lifestyle. You probably needed to sleep. What happened to you? I lost my taste and smell for a day. Okay, well, maybe now you'll appreciate it more.
Big deal.
You know, like we're not like, and then we're all like, oh my God, you got it. And then you go, well, what did you, like, really? It's
So
fine.
what?
I mean, one of our Mexican friends said yesterday, she goes, these are from places that don't have dengue fever. Like, you get dengue fever, that's serious business, you know? Like, we're talking about something that, you know, without all the hype, without all the mainstream, without all of this craziness, no one probably would have even noticed. Like,
Exactly.
you would have thought it was
So
something
what's
else.
going on really? Because it can't be just this. And so you have been reading up a lot.
Yeah, I have.
And you've heard.
I've listened to podcasts and stuff. So
What's the name? Say?
Oh yeah, like I want to mention Tom Cohen again, a San Francisco-based doctor. Do you know him?
No, Tom Cohen.
Tom Cohen.
Oh, Cohen. Yeah. I think I've heard of his. There was a talk of his.
Yeah, that was the one we were mentioning, and this is his latest.
And related to release of new electromagnetic frequencies in the ether, which is what you mentioned on the invisible rain, correct? Yeah.
And he has a pod.
And then he just wrote this book. It's called The Contagion Myth.
Yeah.
Why viruses, including coronavirus, are not the cause of disease, and it's written by him, Tom Cohen, and Sally Fallon Morell, I think she's a nutritionist. But anyways, he has these conversations with Tom Cohen, where he invites different friends of his that are experts in different fields. And one of the talks was with this economist called Catherine Austin Fitz, who was in the Bush administration, who was working on Wall Street in a very high positions in the 80s. And that talk was so elucidating for me because she was mentioning how when she was in the White House, or when she was in Wall Street, at several times there were decisions made by people that were not official people. And sometimes she said it was the Rothschilds. Oh, don't you know? It was the Rothschilds who put that man into place. But that was a very interesting conversation, and she talked about how already in the 90s they decided to leave they gave up on democracy. They gave up on democracy and moved all the resource, all the money was taken out of the States and invested in Southeast Asia. And then there was like 21 or 23 trillion dollars that disappeared, that no one knows about where they went, probably into the space program and also into working with climate to what do you say, mutate to create tsunamis or whatever.
Yeah, manipulate it.
Yeah, and she was, oh, this woman, she's lovely. She's you know, one of the old Quaker, part of the Quaker
nice. Yeah.
family from, I don't know if it's Texas or wherever it is, but she
was listening to her.
Because you understand that this is a really smart woman who jumped off that wagon when she couldn't take it anymore, because she was hearing how these real big shots were talking about how they wanted to start mind control programs through the TV, and this was in the 80s.
Yes.
And she went home and threw out her TV straight away. And but her husband wouldn't accept it. So 2 years later they were divorced. She never had a TV since. And when she's at home, she leaves her phone too, you know, leaves it and just, so she's a real down-to-earth woman. But she gave me some real light upon how the economy is based on war and organized crime, and that the dollar, to keep the dollar in where it is, it was dependent on war and organized crime, and how America was the greatest money launderer in the world. I forget how many billions or trillions of dollars that were laundered each year. But she was talking about that, and she was also talking about how there is a possibility to stop this. I mean, you can go and clear up crime.
Yes, and that's what I think. If I can just interject real quick here, that's what I think people like us need to be really focusing on too, is that we can clean up the crime, and we can do that while we clean up our own crimes within ourselves. We clean out our own energy and do all of that. But that's what's really exciting, I think, about this, is that like we're seeing now the level of it. Like, wow, you know, you get awakened, you read this book, you go, oh my gosh, like this makes perfect sense. Like, wow, all right, well, that links to that and that and that and that. And it all comes back to the money. I mean, the money is the root of all evil. It's like, and let's get rid of the money. If it wasn't about the money, that would be really interesting to think about. And what if the next few years was about that, untangling from that, coming back to the earth, planting gardens, getting less enrolled in the system itself of organized society?
Yeah, but I must interject there that it's not actually about money, because money is just the means that we have for trading. It's about the banks. It's about the banks that control the money.
Well,
and
now we're
money.
The way it's being used.
Huh?
The way it's
and
being
how they
used.
can. Yeah, and how they can make paper money out of thin air, and then decide who can benefit from it and who does have to pay a lot of mortgages and rent and stuff to get a hold of it. And it was also, that was so interesting with her talk. And then later on, when I started to dive deeper into things, and this is quite recently, I listened to a podcast by what's his name now? It's a British journalist and a writer. Paul, what's his name?
Mark Devlin.
Yeah, say it again.
Mark Devlin. Mark Devlin.
No, but I will get it. I will remember it. But he was interviewing a man named Patrick M. Wood. Have you heard of him? No. And Patrick Wood, he's been trying to find out, or he's been investigating something that was called the technocrats from the beginning. And it was an order that was started by David Rockefeller during the Depression in the 30s. And what they wanted was to get rid of the economy. The capitalist economy was gone. It was done. It didn't work. And politicians, they didn't want politicians really, but they wanted to control the resources of the world. And the people in that organization that was started, it was in the beginning, they were called the technocrats, I think. And it was all very experts in different fields, mostly engineers and economists, all over America, and in Canada it was also huge, but also in Europe, in Italy and other places. And they were forming this organization that had to go underground later in the 30s because they were kind of resembling the Nazis. But then they resurfaced in the 70s under new names, like the New Order, the Green, Global Green Thinking. I forget what they're called. And the thing was that between 76 and 80, when you had a president named Jimmy Carter changed all the people in the executive branches and put people from this organization in those offices. And since then, all of the presidents or their vice presidents have been part of this the technocracy, that organization. And there is a huge organization, and you have people in Sweden, in Norway, in Denmark, in Germany, everywhere, in high rank that are part of this organization. And I haven't read this the Trojan horse of global transformation, technocracy rising, but you can understand that they are very big in the UN and WHO, what's it called? WHO. Yeah, which is partly owned by the states and partly owned by guys like Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates is the biggest funder. So what he's revealing is that the people that are in power, the billionaires or these super rich people that are behind the scenes, they are pulling strings everywhere, and it's so infiltrated in the whole world, everywhere. And it was also very interesting for me to understand, because your president Donald Trump, he came out as a real jerk from the start, and when you hear what the news says and the ways he's portrayed, it was like he was a big buffalo, and had no good. And if you read an article today in our biggest newspaper, you read an article retrospecting on 2020, they paint out Donald Trump and the Brazilian president like the two jerks of the year. But then all this stuff led me to buy another book, which is called The Great Awakening by David Hayes, which is, about the Q Chronicles. And this book is like, it's science fiction and it's real.
I know.
I mean, the thing is that
that's the part that's like, wow, and it's science fiction, but it's real and it's happening.
I mean, the thing is that it's so interesting what we came to, and we talked about this before, which was, having God taken away from us, literally. God was taken away from us. It was substituted by science. Science has since become a religion because you can't question science because it's the absolute truth. Now, it's very conveniently used to portray some truths that are definitely biased. This is pretty obvious now. I mean, the gentleman who invented the PCR test, which is used to diagnose COVID-19, states himself that it's ineffective for it. He's got videos saying it. The man is a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1993, given by Sweden. So are we going to say that this guy is a complete mess, but we're trusting science? There's something weird going on and we all know it. And essentially, it's just taking something, turning it upside down, but it's still got the same objective, which is full control. And now that we are in a place where we completely actually mistrust the official version of things. Okay, I can try and convince other people, but it's like trying to take a donkey to a well and forcing it to drink. You've got to be wanting to do it yourself. And everybody's got their own timeline to get wherever they have to go. But I think there's a conversation around the intuitive intelligence, and we've had it taken down because it's really the knowledge of inner wisdom. And yoga brings us that. I mean, we practice these asanas and we move around and we breathe and we sweat and we twist and turn and move our body and unblock our emotions bit by bit. And then we sit in a meditative pose to receive and to commune with a higher consciousness. That's the inner wisdom. We all know it. And then we walk out of the yoga room and watch a text message and it's back to taken, that inner intelligence taken away from us again. So now is the time to really bring forth the tools and the processes so that we can stay connected and in tune. And like you said before, we can actually change the outcome of the world as we wish, because there is definitely something around having communed on the 21st of December for the solstice, mass meditations, and really sensing that there is a change. I mean, I am still feeling attachment to like the old world. I'm having a really hard time with it, but I know it's a release. And then today, this morning, I sat in meditation and I had a journaling, and I realized that I've been walking this path since I was 9 years old. That was just like a mind bend. All these different blocks that built up to it, or basically have been revelatory blocks throughout my life, and been trying so hard to fit in, to do, to be a mirror image, to wear this suit. And it's felt so oppressing. And being together with energies that are like, oh my gosh, so here we come again, full circle. And to realize that I'm not the only one who feels or senses, I bet particularly feels, because the mind is just so confused, the mind brain. And then we have this heart too, and then we got the gut feeling. And just coming back to those, and like you said, Magdi, like, okay, what are the facts? How many people have died this year? How many people died last year? How many people died the year before? And it seems to be the same. We can talk about our personal experience here in Mexico. A friend of ours, like she said yesterday, we're in an area where you get dengue fever. Dengue fever can be deadly. that's the end of it. It's a subtropical area. Never ever has there been a lockdown before because of that. People deal with it. And then there's also remedies to deal with, with symptoms of SARS-CoV-2 or called COVID-19. And like you mentioned, Magdi, we get sick to improve our health. And we've been giving our power away to so-called experts. And when we see these experts, they're like, well, what's this for? Why do you think this cause, what's the cause of this? And they go, I don't know. I just know that if I give you this drug, the symptoms will go down. And like you said, there's definitely another.
They can't prove that.
Yeah.
No, they can't. They can say, we think it will go down, the symptoms.
So I think we're at a place where we all know that the fish is smelling rotten, definitely, all over the place. There's no doubt about that. I'm seeing now in the UK, they're putting something that's called Tier 4, which is really the big lockdown. And I'm thinking to myself, those guys decided to walk out of the European Union. They're in a war right now. It doesn't look like it, but it's a war between the European Union and Great Britain. That's what my conclusive self says, is like, that's what's happening there right now. And they're like screwing them up, and they're trying to make a deal behind the scenes. And then they go, okay, it's a lockdown. You can't move your produce through. It's like, it's bitterly and bad. And we can't operate in that system. People like us who have this connection with the heart energy. So, I mean, what can we do from now? I mean, hold space, keep sharing the practices. Like you said.
First of all, we have to find peace within ourselves. And if you don't have peace, then you will always find war or fighting. And I don't make value judgments that this is bad and they are doing this and that's horrible, because it doesn't serve me to make a value judgment. I can look at it as this is what's going on, but in every given moment, I want to be at peace with myself. So I cannot make a decision that is right for me if I'm emotionally involved, or if I have that kind of wow, saying that this is horrible what's going on. So how can you find that peace? Because that's basically what you're asking. The first thing is that we need to trust that we have chosen to be in this situation, to be part of the downfall of the old system in order to build a new foundation for the new golden age that is coming.
The age of Aquarius.
That's why we're wearing our tie-dyes.
And our purpose is to help our children, and not only the young ones, but my children, to help my grandchildren, which are
my children,
to pave the way. So if we are going to not to judge, doesn't mean that I approve. We need to separate that. I don't agree. I wouldn't do it myself. But how can I become believable or trustworthy or authentic? Because in yoga we talk a lot about authenticity. If I'm not doing it myself.
Totally.
Wow.
And it's in the yoga community. It's in the world. It's so full of judgment. So I'm not judging it, because again, I'm just stating a fact. Or this is what I've noticed. But I can also notice, yes, but how can I feed and see opportunities rather than, like what Anders was telling, it's a science fiction, the worst horror you can imagine. And I've received channeling that this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get worse, much worse. we haven't seen all the pure evil that has been
fostered for 6,000 years.
has been going on, and we're not victims. Now, this is so important to emphasize. We can either choose to be victims, or we can say, okay, I've done my best, but now I have gotten more information, so let me do it differently.
Yes.
What path do I want to choose from now? What do I want to focus? What do I want to feed? Because what I feed will grow.
Yes.
And so this is not so easy when people always pull you back and want to prove that there is a reason for whatever is going on, and it's an awakening for all of us in a way, that there is such censorship, that there are actually forces in our government, the people that the system that we are supposed to trust, that actually wants to kill us or control us.
So intense.
And this is, if you just pull it to the worst scenario,
It's true.
That's the basic the baseline, that is that I mean, Bill Gates said he wants to reduce the world population by half or something like that. And when I mention that to people, they say, yeah, because we don't have enough food to feed them. But what sort of attitude is that? Because we do have enough resources. It's that we're being fed that we don't have,
Right.
or the environment, or whatever it is. And if we lose compassion of equal values, that we have the same value, regardless whether we are poor or rich, or white or black, or Jews or Arabs or Christians, it doesn't matter. Then life will not matter. But if we keep the importance that we are one, which yoga is actually teaching the concept of oneness, and I wonder how many get it, really live by it and understand it, then we are all equals.
Totally.
And so if somebody is hurting out there, or if I'm thinking negatively, then I'm hurting somebody, because that's the energy. But if we go back to the roots and stop judging ourselves, because that is another big issue, and accept that we are always doing our best. And then I hear, of course, millions of objecting people saying, no, we're not, because I could have done better, all that things, the regular stuff. And I would always say no, because if you could have, you would have. So on one level, maybe you understood, but on the other level, you didn't. So you did it. And we are doing the same things over and over again to learn, to raise awareness. And yoga is one tool, but to get into contact and to feel that this doesn't feel right. I don't understand why, but it doesn't have to make sense. But we are taught that everything has to make sense, but it doesn't. It's enough that you have this feeling, it doesn't feel right, then sit with it, accept it. But then again, we are being taught that it's not good to feel uncomfortable. So you need to do everything in your power to run away and drug yourself with either food or TV or whatever, just so that you have no contact with this uncomfortable feeling. And that is our true inner guidance.
Wow. That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. It's true what you're saying about like feeling the feels, like feeling the discomfort. And,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you don't have to stick with it. And that's
Totally.
the next step. Because then people say, oh, I feel whatever. Allow it to be there, and you don't have to do anything with it. Not dramatize it. It's not a big deal to be sad. whatever emotions will pop up. And it will pass if you don't make a drama out of it. But we are in a situation now, and I always want to find solutions, to find a path that is doable, or that help. I don't like to just to feed the horrible things that are going on, but we need to understand that it's a fact. It is going on. We are being manipulated. We are have been tricked into. We have been told information that is not true, with the bad intention, and ulterior motives that are not for the highest good of everybody.
Right.
Okay, so what? So how can I change that? Well, I can change by accepting that this has been. So now let's get educated and start reading, take command of things. And for everything you read, stop for a minute. Does this make sense? It doesn't, or it does, because, but what is the emotion when I read this? I'm afraid. Okay, can I think clearly when I'm afraid? Or do you understand? So that's like untangling or digging a bit deeper inside you.
Yeah.
For like, I've never believed in evil. It sounds crazy, but I know it's over there, but since I'm not, then it doesn't exist. And I always thought that if it doesn't exist in my world, then it doesn't exist.
Wow.
Until I've been actually taught to see the different dimensions and the forces, the entities, and all these things that you see in the Lord of the Rings, all these distorted faces, they exist. So it doesn't come from nowhere. And it's, if I may just tell a personal story to realize how that journey for me started and why I've been taught that. I was in Hungary and I met this woman who could see auras and people being sick and everything, and I can't see that, but I know. So I know what it means. But she didn't understand that. So I thought we were like a great couple, and so I knew the reason behind it, and I know how people feel, and I can see that how they think and whatever. It's like a movie showing to me immediately. But and then one day she said, "Do you want to go into the mirror?" And I've never heard of that before, but I thought, yeah, why not? Like I'm a very curious, interested in everything, basically.
She's a Gemini.
And I went to her home at midnight. Okay, always, and she had this huge mirror, and she says, "You don't have to be afraid. I'm behind you, and I protect you." And I didn't know what she was talking about. And then suddenly I saw this mirror opening up, and I walked in, and I walked down this path into the underworld, and all these figures. This is like 25, 30, that's 30 years ago. So the Lord of the Rings have not been made as a movie, but trust me, they look the same. These or whatever they were called there. Orcs and with the distorted faces and all sorts of stuff in their face, and they were sort of coming towards me, and I looked at them and I continued walking, and I said, "Hi," and I didn't get the whole thing, and after a while she said, and I was allowed to ask questions, and I was showing stuff and things like that, and after a while she took me back, and then I told her what I saw, and then she looked at me and said, "Did you get scared?" And I said, "No, should I have?" And then she said, "Yeah, most people, sometimes they even get psychosis." And then I said, "But why are you doing this to people? if you can't control it. I didn't understand. And then I left her home and I said, am I too stupid to get afraid, to become afraid of things? Why am I, what's happening? So that is how it started. And the reason I was not afraid, and I later discovered it because I was being taught for years to map out the world between dimensions and the underworld and the between world and the good powers and the not so good ones and their intent, all this stuff. And once you've been there yourself and you don't judge yourself, and you have nothing to be afraid of, because it's not, you're clean.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, because it had nothing to do with me. So that is how it started. And my spirit guides, they showed me you have to take this seriously because they do exist. And it doesn't mean that you should get afraid, but and I've been working since then. I understood, because the people get possessed and they do hook in, and fear is the food for them. And so how can I help them? How can people, if I'm afraid myself, if it hooks into me?
Wow.
So this is, of course,
There's a point.
it's so that's how it is. So the information I have received is that it's there is pure evil. Again, I'm not afraid of it, because I know that the light will win in the end. And the journey for people is to trust that they all have the light within them.
Beautiful.
And if you focus on, even if it's just a little twinkle, please look at it. Don't look at the darkness. And when you focus on that, with your intention, you can always make it bigger.
Yeah.
And even if you're lost, even if it's the underworld you live in, focus on it. Everybody has that tiny little
speck of light.
Speck of whatever. It can be big, it can be small, it doesn't matter. But when you focus on that, and I've been giving a prayer, and I've been told to share. And whenever you feel uncomfortable, or you feel something that is not bliss or joy or whatever, you just say it and it will transform it. And I'm not religious, but I am spiritual, and I do believe that we are receiving help, and we are receiving a lot of help now to raise this frequency and help people to focus on the light that we are. We all come from the light, and we all moving back to our origin. We've just forgotten about it. So if that is the only thing that you can teach people, to remind them that they are light, and then start feeding themselves with love, because that will give you peace. And it doesn't mean that I approve what's going on out there, or if I agree or not agree. It's not for me to do that. My intention is to help people to find peace. When you have peace inside, you will also be able to discern what's right and wrong for you.
Beautiful.
No yoga and no peace. No yoga, no peace.
Correct.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow, it's such an honor to be with both of you. Such beautiful energy coming through, even the screen from all this. I just had a flash of like actually being in your presence, and just that feeling was so uplifting, of being like, wow, that's going to happen someday soon. Where, we're all together, and until then, it's just beautiful to receive this
I also would like to say one more thing.
Please.
In the light, darkness cannot prevail.
Totally.
Please remember that. So stay in your light, and now darkness can exist. And this is what they have shown me with all these entities that do attack us. And what they're doing now is feed the fear. So whenever a thought comes up that is fearful, they want to separate people. But the more aware you become, and again, you just say this prayer, and I will give that to you.
And we've given it to them.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Please share it.
Yeah, I don't have the translation here yet, but can I just send it to you another time, and then you can share it with whoever wants to. Just try it out, and it doesn't cost anything.
We have given it to Daniel.
Yeah, but it was mixed Swedish and English, right? Well, so it needs to be translated.
Whenever you have space for that.
Yeah, and if we focus on that, what do we want to create for ourselves? Do we want to feed this fear? Am I afraid of dying? Why? Why am I attached to life instead of allowing me to trust that I will live the life I have chosen to live until I'm done with it, and then I go home and I rest, and then I come back whenever I'm done with it. Yeah. And I used to compare with, the fetus before it gets born. It's hard to give birth because it doesn't want to leave the womb. It's such a cozy place. And then once it has left the womb, it's not happy usually because it's cold and it has to adjust to life. And then once we're in this physical form in life, we don't want to leave it, but because we don't know the good that's waiting for us when we get home. So it's the same process, really, how we have such difficulties in letting go.
Beautiful.
Yeah. My grandmother, she held on for 106.5 years.
Wow. Did she pass? We met your grandmother.
Yeah, she passed in May, in 2019, end of May. Yeah. Wow. It was before this whole soup.
I know. So just that is the only message. So it's not about right or wrong. Yes, we are being fed with a lot of fear. How can we help people?
Do you want to have a little astrological perspective on things?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Because you were mentioning.
We have until like 12. I'm just delighted. I feel like I'm receiving so much, and it just feels so good for me because I feel like I've been over delivering. And so please, like, thank you. Just, it's like a bath. I feel like it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said about astrology.
I'll be right back.
Because it somehow has been like demonized as like, well, that's just something, and this is my perception of the past, like, well, it's just something that, horoscope in the women's magazine, like it's like a little bit of entertainment, and now with this whole year and this unfolding, this like monster unfolding of like, wow, this actually intentional misinformation and control, and like the same thing has happened with astrology. I sense it's a very, very powerful tool, and behind the scenes there's a lot of like big government decisions made around that. If you look at, and you can talk about this because the inauguration of the president, whoever's going to be the new president, is on the entrance start of Aquarius, isn't that correct?
Yes, it's on the 20th of Jan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
this is the United States president when they do this fanfare of like, here we go, you are proclaimed the president of the United States, either a new one or second term. We're yet to see.
Or it's not so. It isn't decided yet that it's Biden.
Say that again.
Is it not decided yet? I'm 100% sure.
Who decides that? That's all I can say. But again, from an astrological perspective, But also, I wanted to just interject with that thing about let's give astrology a higher place and a truthful place at the table of wisdom, which has just been pulled apart, along with our intuition.
It's the same thing with, we can only share our knowledge, but it's still up to people whether they want to believe it or not. So I give the power back to people to trust their own intuition. Does this make sense? Am I doubting? Then ask yourself, can it be possible? Or is it definitely impossible? So it's a question they have to ask themselves.
Exactly. Instead of having an expert telling them this is how you should think or do, this is what we're decoding ourselves now, becoming our own. We're becoming the people that we've been waiting for, essentially. That's all. That's what I sense, at least.
Give back the power to people to trust their own belief system.
So if we come to astrology then, so 2020 was seen in retrospectively, it was seen that 2020 is going to be a very, very special year. But after the period of 2012 to 2017, which was a very rocky road, with the very famous squares between Uranus, the rebel, the awakening energy, and Pluto, the destructive Shiva energy. Pluto moving through Capricorn from 2008 to 2024. Uranus entered Aries in 2010 and came out in 2017, right? So that period was already pronounced to be very, very rocky and like a cardinal crunch they were speaking about and everything. But 2020 was also seen there in the on the horizon as a year with a very special configuration that formed, and it began in January. Or you could say that there was an eclipse on the 26th of December. I think there was a solar eclipse, and then which was in Sagittarius. Am I right? No, it wasn't Capricorn, right? But then in mid-January, I think it was on the 12th of January, there was this conjunction with Saturn, which is building energy, which is the stern, the wisdom aspect, which is gained through experience and through learning to put one and one together, understand. Saturn is a slow moving, the last planet that we see with our naked eye, and he moves about he passes through a sign in approximately 2.5 years. So he entered Capricorn. I think was that in 2018 or 17, but late, and started to come into a conjunction with Pluto in 2019. So 2019 we felt that presence of Saturn and Pluto conjoining their forces in Capricorn. Pluto then is the Lord of the underworld, the destruction, the energy that has to destroy in order to rebuild. So Pluto, whenever you have Pluto visiting your personal planets in your horoscope, you know you're in for a major change. So these two planets conjoined already in 2019, but the exact conjunction was on January 12th, 2020. This conjunction, we had it back in 1518, around 1518, 1519. What happened in the world back then? Well, it was just after Luther had nailed his thesis on the wall and Hernando Cortés invaded Mesoamerica with 500 conquistadors. He managed to take charge of a nation 35 million Indians ruled by the Aztecs in about 18 months. He did that thing, which is, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. But if you know the history, you know that he had allies, and Montezuma was, they had astrologers, and they believed in the omens, and that there were, you know, the return of Quetzalcoatl, and all there were so many stories, so that they were also petrified and accepted that invasion. But anyway, if you just look back in the mirror, you understand that those two things, among many others, had enormous consequences on the development of our societies, of our world. I mean, the Spanish and the Portuguese influence in America, and the splitting of the church, and all the war between Protestant and Catholic Church. So we knew that something big was going to happen. But then in 2020, also Jupiter, the gaseous giant of our solar system, came into Capricorn. And he was already close to these planets in January. When you came into February, they were all within 10 degrees orb, and they are still within 10 degrees orb. So there's been this triple conjunction with Saturn, the builder, with Pluto, the destroyer, and Jupiter is more has to do with self-realization. It has to do with light, with belief, but it also it expands on the energy that it comes in contact with. So it was like putting a magnifying glass on the destructive energies of Pluto and the controlling and ruling energies of Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, that has to do with structure, that has to do with government, that has to do with the father archetype, has to do with Saturn has to do with truth. You don't incarnate on Saturn until you've gone through the real truth business, where you're really truthful. And yet what happened was that it started to reveal stuff about our societies that were not true, right? It lifted up things that it didn't feel right, because they started to jump onto these control mechanisms, and the ruling. I must put in there that Saturn, he's at home in two signs, Capricorn and Aquarius. Those are the two signs that belong to the stern teacher, Father Time, Father Karma. There are many names to the Reaper, but he belongs in these signs. So he's very strong there. And he comes back every 30 years to the same sign. Every 29 and a half years, he returned to the same sign. But he hadn't been there together with Pluto for 500 years and together with Jupiter for 700 years. And the next time that will happen is in 1,000 years from now, that those three giants will meet again in Capricorn. So you get the perspective. It's really windy, and also there's other connections, because so we've had three major conjunctions between these three planets in 2020. First, it was Saturn and Pluto. Then it was Pluto and Jupiter that had 3 exact hits during the year. And now lastly, in December, Jupiter and Saturn met in Aquarius. And that meeting, the last meeting, it happens every 20 years. We have a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. But there is a movement through the elements that takes approximately 200 years. So for the next, it's not really 200 years now, but almost 200 years, we will have Saturn and Jupiter every 20 years when they meet, will be in an Earth sign. And Earth, if you talk about the element earth, it's dry and cold and dry. And that's Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Those are the 3 earth signs. So we will see Jupiter and Saturn meeting there for the next 180 years or whatever it is. But the last time they met there, sorry, I got to take that back. It's been in the earth signs for the past 200 years. And now we're moving, there's a mutation into air. Because Saturn and Jupiter met on the 1st degree of Aquarius. And the last time that they were in this part of the zodiac, in the beginning of Aquarius, was in 1126.
Wow.
So that takes us back to the medieval times. That was the last time that Jupiter and Saturn made a conjunction very close to this part of the zodiac in the sky, in the beginning of the sign of Aquarius. So there is a great mutation going on. And I haven't said so much about Saturn, Pluto, but I think just to know that those 2 energies, they're very, very, they're so heavily felt energies, because they do, Pluto changes and Saturn, he builds, and it takes time to change, it takes time to create, and therefore they're so slow in their movement. And when you have them visiting your personal planets or your ascendant or whatever in your chart, you know that you have to go with the flow and find what are these great teachers teaching me? What do I have to change in order to be true to my new self?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
That's a big one.
Do you hear the banging? It's a new year.
Fireworks.
The fireworks happening.
But that last thing that you just said was so huge too, Anders. That last bit.
Yeah. Sorry.
We heard the fireworks. I was kind of like, "Yay, there's fireworks!" And that was
they are cheering at him now,
celebrating. But the thing was, so during the whole of 2020, every month when the moon has come into Capricorn, it has conjoined with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. So there's been a congregation of elders in the old goats with a fishtail sign every month. And you know, in the beginning of 2020, or in February and March, also Mars was there in February, and then so he spiked up a lot of energy that we felt there in March with and aggressiveness and hostility and stuff. But then Mars moved on, and finally in the summer, late in the summer, he came into Aries. His own sign. No, that was already in July. In July, he came into Aries, and he's been there since. So the warrior energy, the warrior planet, he's been in his own sign. Saturn has been traveling between his 2 winter signs that he owns, and Mars has been in his day sign. He has Scorpio, he has Aries. So he's been in Aries for 6 months, and he will get out of there on the 7th of January. And this is due to Mars's retrograde motion. So he was retrograde for a period between mid-September to mid-November. And therefore, you've been able to see him very much in the night sky. You've seen that red star, very clear on the horizon. As soon as the sun sets, you've seen him, and he's been very visible. And he also started to, with the retrograde motion, things were started to brew, and they began with new lockdowns and stuff, but also you could feel aggressiveness and anger and a lot of, rage has been seething and boiling under the surface. So Mars has also been an important player in the setup of planets during 2020. And he will be an important player, as you say, on the inauguration date. He will have moved into Taurus and joined forces with Uranus, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. He's in Taurus. He came into Taurus a few years ago. And Mars and Uranus will be in a tight, square, very tense relationship with Jupiter and Saturn, and the Sun is there. I don't know how many planets are lining up. There's a lineup of planets, especially in February in Aquarius, which again, it brings us back to, this is the age of Aquarius. The age begun in 12/12/12 or 2012 on 12th of December. Some say 21st of December. That's just, semantics. But it really begun then. So we're at the very beginning of an age that is prophesied to bring in brotherhood, equality, and freedom. And we're sitting in a mess. We're sitting in a situation where none of this is pretty, you can't see it, especially not if you read the news or turn on the TV. But all the same, that's the age that we have entered. And 2021 will be very much characterized by a kind of battle between titans, where you have Uranus on the one hand, moving in Taurus, the sign of money, resources, banking, love, if you want, physical reality. And then Saturn with Jupiter now, but Jupiter will speed ahead and even come into Pisces for a while before it backs down, spend some more time in Aquarius during the year. But Saturn will come into 3 exact squares with Uranus. One in February, the first one is in February, the second one is in mid-June during the eclipses in June, and then again on the 24th of December. And this energy is very interesting to watch because Aquarius is about freedom, yes? It's about science. It's about, it's a air sign, an air sign. It's a fixed air sign. So if you don't know what I'm saying, all the signs are either cardinal, starting energy, or fixed, holding on and bringing things to a fruition, or mutable, passing the energy around, keep connecting. So this square between Saturn and Uranus, it's from Aquarius to Taurus, 2 fixed signs, and that makes you feel it more. It's like the strong-willed signs of Aquarius, of Taurus, of Leo, and of Scorpio. Those are the signs that they're not easy to budge. When they put their heels into the ground, they stay there. But Aquarius is an air sign, so it's very mental. It's very communicative. It's about putting ideas, great ideas, into the minds of men and distributing power among the people. The ideal of Aquarius is a humanity that is ruled by people or by leaders that are elected by the people. And in America, you have such a wonderful constitution. I mean, the founding fathers in the 1770s, they had these ideals, and they just discovered Uranus in 1781 between the American and the French Revolution. So you understand that the influence of Uranus, which is the modern ruler of Aquarius, was very prevalent in those days. And now it's coming back. So we've had a whiff or a sniff of these individuation processes that lead to the naturalization of humanity, where we again understand how important our individuality is in a play with everything else that is. So it's the collective energy of Aquarius. It has to do with the blood, you know, and the opposite sign, Leo, has to do with the heart. And the heart, we say that the heart distributes the blood. It's not, maybe this is not true, because there are new scientific discoveries in this field, but there's definitely the connection of the heart and the blood and the distributing of energy, or of prana, if you want. In yoga terms, we talk about prana and how important the chacric system is for the distribution of the flow of the energy. So this is what's going on. In 2021, there will be a struggle between values that are based in tradition. Taurus is very traditional, and values that are based on science. Aquarius is very scientific. And the banking system, again, belongs to Taurus. And the government, or not the governments, because that's Capricorn, but the ideas, the ideals that should be spread through the government is ruled by Aquarius. So there's a very strong tension for breaking through, for change, and a very strong force for keeping things where they are.
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of that. So 2021 will not necessarily be easier, although we've gone through the portal, and that's a blessing. We did do the 1221 command, didn't we? We came through, and we know that there's a new cycle that has begun.
Yeah.
And there's also the mutation into the air element. And I just wanted to say that the earth element is cold and dry, the air element is moist and hot. So there's a very big change that's going on collectively. And we had a feeling of it back in 1980-81, when there was a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Libra, which was an exception because we were still in the earth element with those conjunctions. But in 80-81, there was a conjunction with Saturn and Jupiter in Libra, and Pluto was there too. For a very short time, the three guys the three planets that we felt in Capricorn throughout the 2020 was for a while also together back in 1981 in Libra. And you can spin on that too, but right now we know that we're definitely moving into the air element of communication, of mind, of intellect, of mental powers. And what does this mean? Well, we can just mind tank or what do you call it?
Well, I brainstorming.
Yeah. On what that means.
For me, what I keep saying, regardless of what the stars are saying, they can warn us or prepare us, but we still need to focus on how to stay grounded and stay focused on what do I want to create for myself, regardless of what's going on around me. And then we can just have a smoother ride. But resistance always makes things harder. And fighting against, like crashing against the waves instead of riding them. Surfing, it's all, as I said, we resist change. Like when we come from the womb and we move on, it's a resistance of change. And this is, I think, one of the hardest lessons for us in the physical body is to accept change. But if we just stay as still as possible and see what's going on and then adjust to the change and focus on just doing what's really right for you, regardless of the repercussions, because you talked about how many people have been attacking you and leaving you, and we've experienced that too. But there is no need to defend yourself.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
No need to defend. What you need to do is stay focused on what you want to create and feed that unconditional, detached way of love, but still stand your ground. It's not to be certain, to be sure. What is my truth?
And right? Yeah, and I also want to say this is a time to be uncomfortable. It is a time to be uncomfortable. You can't sit on your ass and shut up. That's a major mistake in these times. We have to speak our truth and be uncomfortable, but with respect for other people. I mean, so I think that's a very big key, and not to not fall into the trap of power struggles.
And to stand our ground and speak our truth does not mean to convince other people that we are right. Wow. It's so important to remember that. It's our constitutional right, our human right to have an opinion.
And it's also our obligation to speak when we see. It's our obligation to speak. If your eyes are open, it's your obligation to speak. And it was also interesting that I did the drop back to the 1770s, because I'm sure that I was alive then and I was fighting for freedom, for brotherhood, for equality. And we've done it again and again. And those codes are in our DNA. And that's why we shouldn't let anybody mess with RNA or DNA in our bodies. We have our codes there, and we need them, and they are being opened accordingly to time, to the time factor that we're in incarnation. So now they really kick in these energies that.
But I would like to say I'm not so much for fighting, because fighting doesn't sound peaceful.
But she's a lion, though.
I want to stand up for my rights, and without the fighting, just to be obvious, I am who I am. I am this, and I stand my ground and speak my truth, and let nothing
for people
debilitate me or tell me different. But whenever you want to fight for something, it's not a win-win situation. So yes, to speak your truth and be uncomfortable. But other people would say, yeah, but I speak my truth. So what is the truth? And it's not about right or wrong. We need to remember that my truth does not have to be your truth. So how can we share information without getting into this power struggle? Always go back to that thing. I don't want to fight. I just want to have a dialogue. I want to share. It's not about right or wrong.
Fair enough.
But when you want to fix people and you think that you know better what's best for them, and this is very important to remember, we don't know what's best for them. Maybe they need to take that vaccine to get that experience. So I'm not telling people they're doing wrong. I just want to share my knowledge, and it's up to them to take it or leave it or do whatever they want to with it. So we are here to learn, and I know that we have to wrap it up. So I just want to say something else. I talked earlier that the light will win, and this is the win and the whatever battle, because the light always wins over darkness. The journey is going to be painful for some, more painful for others, very painful for a lot of people, which reminds me of when the war between Germany, in Berlin, when it fell, and East and West for the first time came together, or the people behind the Iron Curtain suddenly realized how they have been fed with lies their whole lives. These people had an existential crisis.
Yeah.
That a lot of people committed suicide. They were complete. They had no identity suddenly. Everything they believed in was, and this is what's going to happen again.
And it's also very interesting that Angela Merkel came from that.
She came from that life, and it will be revealed who is the good guy, the bad guy. It doesn't matter. What I wanted to say is our job is not to feel sorry for people, because that's condescending. Whatever, he said it. Our job or our role is to embrace people wherever they are on their journey, regardless whatever they have done or believed in or whatever. So please focus on healing your own fears, on healing your own wounds, so that when these things will come up, and they will for sure, you can be a light worker,
a lighthouse, or a beacon.
A beacon or a lighthouse, because what does a beacon or a lighthouse do? They shine, and people need to navigate in that dark water, and they don't do so much, but some people will have to stop at the lighthouse to recharge their batteries, and then you will be able to stand firmly. You can't run after the boats that are astray, or people's souls that are running around in fear, because then you will run around in fear. Wow. So pull back your energies and just heal yourself and be there. Stop with the judgment. Don't feel sorry for anybody, because everybody has chosen the journey, and nothing is wasted. It's just a learning situation. That's looking at things from above in a physical body.
That's where it's at.
So 2021 is going to be a place where we're going to get spiritually, emotionally, and physically fit. We're going to get challenged even further.
Definitely.
And I really appreciate what you said about it's stepping into the unity consciousness, where as I am, stand firm in who I am. Mm-hmm. You stand firm in who you are, and in that place we can actually be together. So in that scenario of canceling out somebody else's opinion, then we're already engaged in a conflict. Exactly. However, as uncomfortable as my opinion, your opinion can be towards each other, it's saying, okay, well, we have a right to go on our own journey, and that's so important to stand there. So if somebody says something, and we're seeing it with families getting split, with old friendships falling apart, it's like, we have to respect our own journey. Really, that's the way it is, and it's already been kind of.
And then ask yourself, how can I create peace? How can I build bridges rather than feed separation? And you can only do that by swallowing your ego and saying, I don't want to be right. I think you're so important to me. So please don't let this difference in opinions separate us. It's not worth it.
It's beautiful.
Is it worth to be right and then lose friendship?
Or family?
Is it so important to be right that you pay with a relationship or separate yourself from friends and families? If the answer is yes, because there are people like that, then there's nothing you can do. If the answer is no, then put it aside. There are so many other things that you can talk about. And the interesting thing is that up till now, who has ever been in total agreement with somebody? Nobody. And we didn't separate.
Right.
We didn't say, I don't want to be friends with you because of this opinion. Has somebody ever said that? I mean, I'm sure it has occurred, but this is suddenly become completely out of hand. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, not to this degree. Not to this degree. And it's definitely exercising compassion and forgiveness. It's going to be huge. And like you mentioned, like if we are somewhere and we can see somebody that might be going a road that might seem longer, and just to be there for others. And this is the purpose of doing this thing live right now, using the technology that we have at hand, is to share, like, there is something going on. There's a notion, something going on, and you might have some sprinkles of agreement here and there, and to stand for our fellow humans. That's all it is, really. And I thank you so much for just showing up on this beautiful end of the day of the year. And sorry,
it cut out for a second. What did you say?
I said, please remember that no road is longer. We are exactly where we should be on our path and learning what we are supposed to learn in every given moment. So take that with you.
You just have to take more steps sometimes.
but it doesn't matter, because it's still a learning situation. I mean, look at your babies. How many times when they started to learn to walk, how many times did they try to do that? They never said, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't learn immediately, so I'm sitting down and I'm staying here the rest of my life. It's not. And as we get older, that's what we're doing, instead of judging the steps. No, we do it as long as it needed to learn the lesson. So God bless you, and thank you so much for inviting us.
And
peace.
I also, I want to, but we can communicate on the whatever, because I know that Marie, you're in for an appointment with one of our friends up in the skies.
Really? Did I get called in?
No, but you have to order it yourself. So I'm going to write you about that. But it's
I would love to. I'm so ready. I'm so ready. Bring it on. I can't say. I really just sat and received so much. I'm a little super tender today, but to be with both of you has just been so healing and so inspiring, and just felt like family. It felt like being home and safe and like nurtured, like you're nursing us with this juice, and we love it. I loved hearing the astrological bit. Magdi, this was the first time I feel I actually felt you and really heard, wow, just all of the beauty and magnificence that comes through you. So
we're ready for it.
Yes, thank you. Thank God. It's been such a journey. This year has been a real upgrade for us, and we're still in it, and it's beautiful, and I'm so grateful for all of it. And thank you for seeing the light in us. We certainly see it in you, and we love you both. And happy New Year. I cannot wait. I want my chart read, Anders, all of it. Like, let's do this again. You can come on Miraculous Mondays too. We do these live shows on Monday now. maybe we'll have you come in, maybe Magdi, you just once, and then Anders once or something. It's like anyway, we'll sort all that out. But I just am so, so, so grateful to be in this with you, really.
I will send
Namaste.
a prayer and please share it because it's really, really helping. Thank you. God bless
We
you.
will.
Namaste.
Happy New Year.
I love you guys. We love you. Happy, happy, happy New Year.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
Namaste. I wonder if we could just stop this and then say goodbye on the other one, just real quick.